Now let's take a deeper dive into how these vaccines could be distributed to hundreds of millions of Americans. We bring in retired Lieutenant Colonel Kris Alexander, who was a COVID crisis planner for the military's Northern Command. Thanks so much for joining us, Lieutenant Colonel.
Hi, how are you? Good to be here.
I'm well. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Question for you. How viable will it be to get the vaccine to all Americans, even those living in remote or rural communities, as we mentioned in our last segment?
Wow. So that is the really tough question that I wrote about is that when you start looking at the logistical requirements of a vaccine, and particularly the Pfizer vaccine, which requires, this ultra cold storage, that really remains to be the question is like, how do we get a vaccine that's going to be tough to store and tough to transport into the most remote corners of America, like Lipscomb County, Texas, which I wrote about in my article.
And could the U.S. face shortages of essential distribution supplies like dry ice and ultra-cold freezers, like the PPE shortages that we saw in the spring?
Well, that's the fear, right? Is that we are in the midst of a transition to a new administration. There's a lot of lack of federal leadership from the top. And the last time we went through this was when the PPE, and there were shortages, and state and local governments were left, scrambling to fill in the gaps. And so it's hard to identify whether there's a plan to provide the dry ice, provide ultra cold freezers to places that don't have it. I mean, typically those are two items that you don't have a lot of. And, and so I really haven't seen a lot of information in my research on this about, what's the plan to fill in this gap. I know I read an article in USA Today that I think it's North or South Dakota is considering buying its own dry ice plant in order to make up this gap. So that's how people are looking at this problem. And there's no good answers.
Well, President Trump has suggested that it'll be the military that distributes the vaccine. Let's take a listen.
We have a vaccine that's coming. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine.
Now, you worked in the military's COVID crisis operation. Is the military prepared to pull this off and effectively?
I don't think so. And it's not because, we have a great military. I spent, my entire adult life up to this point in uniform. However, it's limited. So there's several factors. One, the military is not designed to take the lead in this. We have always planned to be the supporting role to civil authorities. So it's just kind of, I don't think it's right to think that the military could somehow come in and replicate what state and local governments do. Second, the military is going to have a pretty big lift in this as well. You've got to think. The military now is going to have to plan, how do we get the vaccine all across the globe to all our troops and their families in remote locations everywhere. And then the third thing is you've seen all this chaos and churn that's going on in the Pentagon right now. And these orders to withdraw out of Iraq and Afghanistan, that is going to be a big lift for the planners, and there's only so many. So, I don't think we can count on the military to blanket the country with resources. When I was at Northcom, we knew we could surge resources to problems, but that we couldn't blanket the country with them. I mean, there's just so much we can do. So yeah, I don't think the president's right here. I think he's tweeting, and then maybe his advisors are telling him the truth, which he didn't like to hear.
And the Pentagon, of course, just announced a major drawdown of U.S. troops from Iraq and Afghanistan by mid-January. Could that operation potentially consume time and resources that could have gone toward vaccine distribution?
Well, I mean, that's hard to tell. Domestically, I don't know, because it would be CENTCOM's responsibility to plan that withdrawal, right? And also CENTCOM's responsibility to plan how to get the vaccine out to the troops that are still in the field. Northcom has the responsibility for the defense support to civil authorities mission, which I worked on. So, but really, what happens is when all those plans and all those efforts they flow into the Pentagon. And the Pentagon's the approval. The Pentagon's gonna have to review them. And I just wonder if all the the people who do that type of thing are going to be consumed in this churn.
Now, when you were planning for the COVID crisis, did you factor in that some people won't want to take the vaccine, or the anger out there about this virus and how the government has handled it?
Oh gosh, well, I mean that's a tough question, and kind of that's kind of beyond the military purview, right? But as a citizen, sure, I'm concerned that people won't take it and we'll have lingering pockets of this vaccine for months and maybe years to come. What it's really going to take is, from the new administration, is going to take a pretty good communications campaign to convince people that it's safe, assuming that it's safe, and to take it and be good citizens and do it and protect each other.
And lastly, President Trump, of course, refuses to concede the election to President-elect Joe Biden and officially begin the transition process. How do you think that impacts preparations for vaccine distribution?
Really, you're going to have a gap potentially in preparation, and how long that gap lingers costs lives. So you really want a seamless thing. President-elect Biden has said, he wants to be ready to go on day one. He's putting his team together, and lives are at stake. So the clock's ticking, and the longer the transition takes, and the less the outgoing team and the incoming team talk, the more problems we'll have as a nation.
Lieutenant Colonel Kris Alexander, thanks so much for your insight and expertise here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.